Hi, everybody. I've got something different for us today. We're going to be doing a deep dive into aerial sky photography and the man who has developed a hobby capturing whatever anomalous objects he can photograph zipping through the sky at high speed. I understand some of his videos capture natural terrestrial phenomena like birds and insects. But then there are these anomalous objects. What are they? And where can they be seen? Scott has invested in prosumer-grade camera equipment and also uses audio tones and playback devices to experiment with strategies described on the CE5 forums to attract UAPs. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Don. I'm excited to be a part of this project, so I appreciate your willingness to collaborate together on this.
I'm having a lot of fun here too. You've got a very sophisticated hobby here. Why don't you take it away and tell us how you got started in all of this?
My interest was sparked in May 2024. My wife and I had a UFO sighting near our home at nighttime. At that point, I'm like, okay, these are real. I would love to ground truth this other than seeing a bright, fast moving light buzzing overhead at night. So I started doing some research into equipment that could capture UFOs on camera. I ran across a gentleman doing a lecture at a university one day on YouTube. It was a recorded lecture. His name was Courtney Brown, and he had the specs for the equipment needed to capture high-speed objects moving through the sky in the visible and non-visible light spectrum.
Wow.
When I say non-visible, infrared and UV light. I pulled the specs off his website and purchased a high-speed video camera, full spectrum, mirrorless. And what that means from a technical perspective is you can capture fast-moving objects that you cannot see with your eyes, and you can capture objects that are outside the visible light spectrum for human beings. I purchased the camera, number one, as a hobby, but number two, my wife and I have been planning our retirement travel. And one of the things we came up with is, as long as it has a day spa, we could go to it. That was my wife's input. Okay. My input was, as long as it's a UFO hotspot, we can go to it. Because I had my camera and I was going to capture some of these things on camera at the UFO hotspots. I didn't know how to use the camera, right? I had to start from ground floor on that. So I did a lot of practice out of my backyard. And the first day I had the camera, put it on a tripod, pointed to the sky, and captured what people commonly refer to as a tic-tac or cigar-shaped UFO, moving fast overhead. Speed unknown, height unknown, just really fast. And I couldn't see it with my eyes, but my camera saw it when I reviewed the video on Adobe Premiere Pro. Our first hotspot trip was to Mount Shasta. Got a UFO going inside Mount Shasta. Our second hotspot trip was to Sedona, Arizona, specifically Bradshaw Ranch. Captured all kinds of high strangeness out there, UFOs, orbs. It's a well-known hotspot, and it paid off that day. And I actually got to see a UFO with my own eyes. Most of the other objects I wasn't able to detect with my eyes, but I did see them on video review.
Gotcha.
So I continued getting better at using the camera. It was paying off, and I was doing all the practice in my backyard. I started getting a little deeper into how do you track these things. I had seen some things on YouTube where electromechanical stimulation, environmental stimulation can potentially bring more objects in or different objects. So I started experimenting in my backyard. The first time I tried using environmental stimulation was April 19th of 2025. I used a crop circle recording, an alleged crop circle recording. It was available on YouTube. I downloaded it, put it on my phone, played it through a Bluetooth speaker, pointed the camera to the sky, and amazing objects showed up on camera. Didn't see them with my eyes, but they were there on video review. Amazing. At that point, I was perplexed, curious, amazed at what I had seen on camera, because these clearly were not terrestrial objects that I'm used to seeing in nature. So I continued filming, and I went out in our county areas. We have mountains around our county to film. I wanted to get to a higher elevation to see if I could get out of my backyard and capture things out in other areas. Went up to the mountains behind our house, captured something really strange, and that I sat on that picture for about 2 or 3 weeks. I knew it was something strange, but I also knew I was going to have to probably commission a psychic to help me figure out what this is. Right. And I didn't want to spend the money to find out if it was a bug. So I finally just got to the point where if it's a bug, it's a bug. And I contacted David. And you did your remote view. That was
David Powell.
in June. Yes. And after your results, I was, if we go back to the video, when you started reporting your results, my eyes got teary.
Wow.
For a few reasons. Remote viewing's real. I had been following it, and I had taken a course, but I hadn't had the full experience that you gave me through your remote view. And the things I was capturing on camera were strange. They didn't have a terrestrial explanation. You validated 2 things for me that changed my worldview, frankly. So your remote view project allowed me to believe there's more to our reality than maybe I understand. Mm-hmm. Why don't you share that, and maybe even share what's happened up to today, because it's pretty amazing.
Okay, so let me bring that session up here. On my left are the handwritten pages of my session, and on the right, my session summary. Genuine remote viewing is always done blind, meaning the viewer has no clue, no idea what the target is. None. In our first meeting months ago, I, as the remote viewer, learned what your secret target was. This black orb or shape that flew in front of your camera. You were doing sky photography, and this looked odd, and you employed remote viewing to get more information about it. Okay, these words appeared at the beginning of my session summary document. They described a soft energy that descended upon a flat surface that looked a little bit like a land mass, and the energy is now focused there in this natural environment. Perhaps that's a bit symbolic, but that's typical of remote viewing data, which tends to pick up the surrounding energy. It's like a psychic eye that moves all around the object and its associated data, its location, motivations, attitudes, and anything associated with it, including yourself, Scott. I like to explain where my data comes from, which is something you don't see many remote viewers doing. On this first page, I drew this scribble. Let's focus in on that. This scribble is supposed to be a warm-up to clear your mind. But for some reason, my scribbles tend to convey physical target data right away. I did a fascinating research study about this scribble phenomena, how these so-called ideograms can convey symbolic picture-like data. And if you're interested in that, you can click up here in the corner. Knowing there might be symbolic data in this scribble, I tried to interpret it in the first paragraph of my session summary. Something was flying in near a taller physical object, and that might be the tree in your tasking photo, or this mountain you showed me in one of your other orb photos. Whatever was flying in, it was around this region here, which intuitively looked something like a county map, which I called a landmass. Scott, out of curiosity, I looked up Hollister, California, where you live, and your county map does resemble this part of my scribble. This scribble took less than 1 second to make, yet look at the data it has already conveyed. Something flying in around your area and flying off. And there's mountains or tall structures of some sort in the vicinity. Is this not fascinating? I haven't even started the actual remote viewing session yet. The session data begins on the next page. I labeled this ideogram in my paperwork for you so you could understand how I derived my data. The upward slope in segment A, I felt described a mounting effort. This could be interpreted like the beginning of your project, the uphill effort getting started. Or maybe it's involving climbing a hilly region, which I think you also did. Both are described by the word mounting, as does mounting a camera on a tripod. Interesting, right? Remote viewing data is often multidimensional. The two bumps at section B I described as soft energy, like thinking and a wait-and-see attitude. I think these are describing you, Scott, how you set up your camera equipment, started shooting with a wait-and-see if you got anything attitude. Section C, D, and E described revising your approach. And section F, well, that line has an artistic feel to it, doesn't it? A line that gracefully curves both up and down equally. Very artistic. I think that's you again, Scott. What you're doing with your photography, editing, and presentations. Very artistic. Are you seeing how intuitive reading ideograms can be because I allow them to communicate? They are literally talking to me. To skip through the rest of my session, I perceived multiple bright lights in the sky and thoughts about an ET craft. Bright individuals or souls. Interesting. That sounds a lot like your bright orbs, which we've speculated to be ET craft or incorporeal thought energy. In other words, mental intellects or souls flying around in the sky. A directed energy that is steered and navigated. And there was an associated element of amassing data and then reporting it in a carefully designed and controlled way. Scott, I believe that's a bit of precog foretelling the future, because this podcast, which is being shot months after this remote viewing session, is what we're doing right now. Collecting data, then reporting it in a carefully designed and controlled way. This is so interesting. And look at the one just below, Don's channeling. We are going to be talking about this later, but I am Don and I do channeling. And again, months after the remote viewing session, we decided to do an experiment where I would try to channel in real time whatever was appearing in a video you were shooting. On the next page, the name Courtney Brown came up. And Scott, you told me you got camera equipment advice from one of Courtney Brown's lectures. Look how the remote viewing multidimensional mind is connecting the dots. That gentleman represented the beginning of your project, right? And then the next item, I wrote, my own ET interview. I am associating interviewing ETs with your target orb. Remember during our channeling experiment, I used a voice recorder. I interviewed them while they said they were dancing in front of your camera lens. I sent you that voice recording. Yet another precognitive perception. My perception now declared that spirits or incorporeal entities were involved, and they were floating and drifting unattached and free. Soft energy, thought energy, the mind going on a journey. Where did those perceptions come from? Look at the ideogram. The L, the small loop there, is a symbol for an intellect. And what is that intellect doing? It's certainly not in an agitated, jumpy state. I almost get the impression it's dancing, a casual, meandering feeling as it travels on a journey. And I thought this list describes our reactions to all of this. Thought, confronts hard beliefs and reality, trying to make sense of it. That's what we're doing right now, Scott. Your photography is taking pictures of things people don't normally see or believe in, and they, like us, will be trying to make sense of it all. It may challenge their belief systems. I didn't do a lot of sketches in this session, but the several I did seem appropriate. These lights in the sky, I think, are right on target. Now, getting back to your target photo, take a look at this ideogram. Notice how it's directed to the right and contains an L, the remote viewing life form symbol. Look how it matches. And in this one, look how it matched this photo you sent me later. There's an interesting story about this one. Remote viewing is sort of multidimensional, as I mentioned, and it will use the shortest path it can to convey information. Here I started thinking about Pharaoh Akhenaten and his worship of the sun disk Aten. Now, your sky photography has shown many faint circular luminous orbs in the sky. These were probably too difficult for me to perceive psychically, so my subconscious worked around that problem by injecting thoughts about something similar, Pharaoh Akhenaten and his Aten sun disk. Remote viewing is truly something amazing. There's so much more in this remote viewing session, we just don't have time to go over. I'd like to thank David Powell, the project manager and tasker for this remote viewing project. Thanks, David, and thank you for assigning me to this project. So I think my remote viewing declared your orbs to be thought energy, mental energy, or consciousness that was meandering around at high speed, almost like they were sightseeing. Or, as my diagram mentioned, thought energy, confronting hard beliefs or reality, trying to make sense of it.
Don, that was probably one of the most compelling sentences I read in your remote view notes. That absolutely described me, but I didn't quite understand it.
Yeah.
So I reached out to you so we could explore thought energy confronting hard beliefs or reality and try to make sense of it.
Yes, I was attracted to the notion of these sky objects. They seem to involve consciousness at some level. That actually leads us into the next show, where Scott and I wanted to investigate the consciousness connection. And I did a channeling session with the intent to attract these potential conscious sky objects while Scott was simultaneously shooting sky video, and just to see what might happen. We'll see you all next time. Thank you for watching.